Hey, everybody, and welcome to Common Good Conversations, a podcast working to create deeper narratives at the intersection of faith and politics for the common good in West Michigan. My name is Nick Brock, and I am the Executive Director for Vote Common Good West Michigan. And co-hosting with me today is Shawn Skinner. Shawn, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Yourself?
I'm well. Thanks for being here, because we do this together.
Yes. It's a family deal, kind of.
It is. It is a family deal because you are my brother-in-law.
Yep.
Shawn,
Thanks
today,
to years of whiskeys and cigars, we've made that work.
Yes, we have. How long now? I've been married 7 years.
I think 7 years.
Yeah. But Shawn, today we have the privilege of being in conversation with the Democratic candidate, Christian Kleinjans, selected to run against Ottawa Impact Commissioner Ebel, a Republican, in a special election, a recall election for Ottawa County Commissioner in District 2. But before we dive into all of that, Shawn and I are going to dive into a few other things. And I've got this for us before we talk about the recall election. So I just stepped out of the office, and you should be. This is a real big topic. I just stepped out of the office, and Christina came back home with Wyatt after being out in the morning. And she says, hey, you got a letter in the mail. And
this literally just happened in real time?
Literally, like 3 minutes ago. So she had already opened it, and it's a handwritten letter in pen, almost looked like in cursive. And it's from somebody I don't know. Neither of us know. And it goes on and on. It's like, I don't have time to read this, but just doing the cursory overview, it looked like a message from a Jehovah's Witness who had attempted to knock on our door and left us a message about, hey, you should join our group, and here's why. Fun fact, cool. Right?
Nice.
I put it down, and I was like, I don't have time for this. I'll look at it later. But I walked away feeling really positive. Do you want to know why?
Why?
Because they wrote it out. They got
they spent the time to actually write it down and actually do something.
That's right. Yeah, it made me feel
something that was printed and put in the box.
Yeah, it made me feel special and good about having a personal message. For sure, it was a scripted message. Well, I shouldn't say for sure, but highly likely. But the time that it takes to write a full-page letter on every line is that's some good commitment.
Yeah. Now it makes me want to do something like that. That's actually something I had wanted to do prior to my grandmother passing away years ago, was to write her a letter every single week, because I thought I'd give her something exciting to wait for in the mail and something to read. Unfortunately, I never ended up doing it. But yeah, there's a certain charm to going old school with a pen and paper and sending something like that.
Yeah, I mean, we hardly ever write on pen and paper. All the writing that I do for the podcast and anything else happens on the computer through Google Docs or Microsoft Word. So
we're sounding like some old farts right now. Like soon we're gonna go back to our flip phones and pagers.
Well, we're getting there. We're not getting any younger.
It was simpler times, though.
Was it really?
In a way.
I don't know. Every generation.
Excuse me, I got to go I got to find a payphone real quick, and I need to get some quarters and call collect and.
Yeah. If only we could make America great again and somehow go back into the past and make things better. That would just.
You had to say that while I was drinking water. I couldn't find my mega hat this morning. I looked.
I know, really disappointed in you. So listener, there was, in one of our first episodes, Shawn shows up with a Make America Great Again hat again. But to my surprise, it was not in red. It was in blue, right? It was a blue hat?
I think it was like navy blue. It was almost black. Yeah. And it looked like a naval cap, actually, with the. Yeah. I thought it was fun. I thought it was funny. You seemed amused. Don't you have a hat like that? It doesn't say "Make America Great" again, but it's a red hat and it's got something else in front of it.
Oh yeah, it's a 4th of July hat that says, I think America. Yeah, apostrophe America.
America.
Found that at a gas station. I am prone to buy cheap hats at a gas station. I bought that trucker hat. I've bought, and this was when I was on the Vote Common Good bus tour. You know, we'd stop at these big truck stops, and you walk in there, and they got all sorts of things. And one of these places, I think we were in Iowa. There was a cowboy hat. I put that thing on, and I walked away with that. That thing looked
I have not seen that hat yet. You should have that in your. You should
good.
wear that for every podcast.
I should. Man, and I threatened to wear it every time that I did my little stump speech, but I chickened out.
You should have done it, you chicken shit.
Yeah. Hey, no curse words on this show. Hey, Shawn, do you know what a recall election is, or why a recall election would occur?
Not off the top of my head. The only the first thing that comes to my mind is all the Trump recounts in like Arizona and stuff like that. When I hear something like recall or recounting or redo election, and that's the thing that first comes to my mind when I hear recall or something to that effect.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're not so familiar with recalling a candidate and having a special election outside of the normal election process.
I am not familiar with that on a regular basis. No.
All right. Well,
So
you are
learn me
just
up.
like most people, and you are. Let's learn about this as we go. So I want to give a quick overview of this process before we get into this with Christian. And Christian can talk about this a little bit more. But for our listener here, a recall election, according to check this out, the Election Officials Manual from the Michigan Bureau of Elections, Chapter 18, called Recall Process. It's all laid out. So I want to read a few paragraphs that are really specific to the recall election for a county commissioner. Now, there's this subtitle that says public officials that are subject to recall. So this goes into who is subject to recall. And it says all elective officers in the state, except judicial officers, judges, are subject to recall by the voters of their district. An officer who is being recalled, like a county commissioner officer such as Lucy Ebel, may continue to perform the duties of their office until the result of the recall election is certified. So Lucy Ebel, during this recall process, may continue to serve in her capacity. Now, the Michigan election law states that a recall petition against a candidate or an officer shall not be filed against an official, number one, during the first 6 months or the last 6 months of the officer's term. So there's this period of time or window where this recall process can happen.
Take place.
And yeah, so this recall process then took place this past summer, July. And so next, when this is put forth, the thing that makes it move along is there needs to be language that is that has clarity and that is factual. And what this means is that the County Election Commission, which is unique to the county of Ottawa County, and this is comprised of the county clerk, the county treasurer, and the chief judge of probate. They review the language of a recall petition to determine that it is factual and of sufficient clarity before the petition is circulated. And I'll get to what that means. So a clarity factual review is the starting point of each and every recall effort launched in Michigan. So for this recall election specifically, the language says, quote, on February 28, 2023, Commissioner Lucy Ebel voted for a motion to correct the previous Board of Commissioners' December 13, 2022 resolution that appointed Adeline Hambley as Administrative Health Officer for Ottawa County. So that's just kind of like the fact. And then it ends here by saying Commissioner Ebel voted for the motion after Ms. Hambley challenged in court the commission's designation of her status as interim health officer. So that is the thrust for how anybody can start a recall petition. You have to state what happened, what your disagreement with is in order to move this process along. And now there's a few more things. So then a sponsor of a recall effort, that sponsor submits the petition language to the county election commission. And then the individual submitting the recall election must be registered to vote in the electoral district represented by the officer. All that says is that, Shawn, you and I, since we live in Kent County, we can't recall an elected official who lives in Ottawa County because we don't live there. So somebody who lives in that district has to do that. And that person was Larry Jackson, the former Democratic candidate for Michigan's state house in Ottawa County, which I think that was District 86.
Safe to say that he's a resident in Ottawa County.
Totally. Otherwise, this would be flat on its face. All right. So this language then proceeds to a meeting. And then this meeting works to identify the course of conduct that is the basis for the recall. The officer whose recall is sought and the sponsors of the petition may appear at the meeting and present their arguments as to why or why not that is factual. And that language, the process or the argument put forth must be based on the officer's conduct during the time in office. And I think this will be a question that a lot of people have is like, well, what about the language? The commission does not have the authority to rule on whether the petition includes good reasons for recall. That is not subject to how this process proceeds. Not if it's a good reason, but only if what put forth is has clarity and is of factual nature. So, without having to go further and further into this then proceeds into gaining signatures. You need to have enough signatures for this to move on. Once it gains enough signatures, then it gets to be put on the ballot, and then that will occur on May 7th. So, does that sound confusing enough for you, or is that clear as mud?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
I get the gist of it. Might have gotten deeper in there than we needed to round it out. But I get the gist of it.
You get the gist. Hey, Shawn, this is a podcast where we inform people about what's going on. We're going to inform them to death. Christian, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I've described all this, I mean, I'm sure you know about this process, how it all unfolds. I wonder, could you just walk us through a bit about, maybe how you felt or your thoughts as this recall process was proceeding? There's points where people are thinking, okay, is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? What's the deal? What was that like for you?
Yeah, there was pretty high drama at several stages of this process, beginning in really early mid-spring when we first, a group of us of the second district kind of coalesced about the idea of considering attempting a recall effort, which, as you kind of laid out, is not an easy lift. It is not meant to be, by its very nature, it's not meant to be super easy. It has to afford the incumbent, opportunity. It should be difficult. So throughout the process, from the filing on July 3rd to the final validation of our signature count in late November, it was fascinating because this is, as you've kind of revealed as well, a very intricate part of our state's election law. But it was exhausting because it was a long, hot summer with some delays and some pauses while things got straightened out. But at the end of it, it was a super exhilarating experience to be a part of. I believe we are in a thin group of recalls that have been successfully brought from petition to a scheduled election that have taken place in the state of Michigan since the recall procedure was modified, updated, whatever you want to call it, during the Engler administration. Or I'm sorry, during the Snyder administration, my bad.
Mm-hmm.
So it was something very exciting to be a part of. Those of us on the committee, I mean, the people I worked with on the committee were just the most intelligent and passionate people, some of the most intelligent and passionate people I've ever done anything with in my life. And we had an amazing core of volunteers that came from literally all over the county and some from outside the county to help us do this lift. It was a really great undertaking. The upside for me as a member, as a resident of the second district, is I got to meet a lot of my neighbors, a lot more of my neighbors, walking streets, knocking on doors, finding out not just how they felt about their current representation, but really just how they felt about being in Ottawa, how they felt about being on the north side, how they felt about being here. And it was it's been brought up in our culture that we just don't talk enough to each other. And this was just a great opportunity to meet complete strangers and engage in conversation about things of depth and things that matter.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You mentioned that, there's a thin rate of success for these recalls, when it comes in to these things in the state of Michigan, but yet this one proceeded, and it proceeded, it had more than enough signatures to move past the threshold, and even some signatures were, harvested out of that. They just got rid of it because of, whatever, they didn't meet the specific criteria. So there was just a lot of energy behind this. So my question here is, as you were speaking to, people in your district, obviously some of these people are complete strangers to you. What was the animating? Well, clearly the committee and the thing is to recall Lucy Ebel. So you're speaking to people and who are going to sign this, who are already with you on that, right? And maybe you have to persuade some. But what was the most animating thing for people there? Was it like the health department, or the getting rid of DEI, etc.? What was it that really kind of was at the top of people's list?
I will select answer D, all of the above. A lot of people came to sign this petition for different reasons. The fact that the debate over the health department budget was going on through the really intense period when we were doing a lot of signature gathering did play into a number of people's desire to kind of make their opinion known in the district as far as how they felt about this. But there was a lot of concern about the fiscal responsibility. The actions of January 3rd of their first meeting with firing the county administrator, bringing in a new county administrator, eliminating the DEI department. Those are actions that were well within the board's purview, but the manner in which they did them cost the county a significant amount of money. And so, there was some concern about, the county's finances, legal fees as we sort of went through the process. The legal fees that the county was incurring also became an issue that a lot of people knew about. So that was, another financial thing. And then, at the end of it, there was an undertone of just the desire to kind of return to a level of governance that was more courteous, that engaged in more debate, that engaged in, what we call, we'd all call good governance. Just the give and take that forms the very basis of all of our undertakings in whatever level of government. So there was a lot of concern about the tone and the tenor and the direction that things were going in, and but wrapped in that were people upset about DEI, people worried about money and the county's finances, and people worrying about services from the health department. People came for a variety of issues.
Yeah, so a variety of these issues animating local government. So as these issues played out in real time during the petition process, um, Ottawa County has historically been Republican and is still, and many people identify with the Republican Party and vote that way. So you running as a Democrat, selected by the Ottawa Dems to move out Commissioner Lucy Ebel, the Republican. What kind of conversations were you having with Republicans in your district? Um, what were they saying? Like, the conversations that we've had on the podcast is like, hey, this is not our Republican Party. We don't like this type of thing. We want to return to some of the things that you mentioned. So I wonder, what were those conversations like? How did they go?
I had personally so many wonderful conversations with people who self-identify as conservative and self-identify as Republican. And my last name kind of gives it away. I'm a little bit Dutch. So growing up in this area and really, coming out of the RCA, and I was, steeped in the Dutch conservative sort of value system mindset, whatever you want to call it, from birth. And for a lot of the conservatives that we talked to, it was about fiscal responsibility and making sure that the county worked as hard as it could to deliver services in an equitable, fair manner to everybody here who wanted to call the county home, and to make sure that we do look to everybody that lives here and strives here and thrives here, to make sure that they all have the tools they need to be successful. I do know that from a family that immigrated here in 1847, we didn't get here on a winning streak. Okay, we left because things were bad back home, and so in that worldview is the notion that there needs to be fairness in the system, and fiscal responsibility creates that the possibility of that fairness. It creates the possibility for a level playing field, and so the the actions of firing the county administrator, and then the initial moves as far as what the proposed budget for the health department was, with a 50% cut, and then that whole negotiation process and what would be lost in that, was not lost on my conservative friends and family, who were concerned about how this would affect their neighbors. And we talked to a lot of people that had not just a little bit of concern, but a lot. And it's important to remember, like you just pointed out, the formal structure of the party in the county might not be representative of those who self-identify as conservative or Republican. The party, same as any county, I mean, same nationally, those who identify and pay dues and pay membership to be in the party are usually the minority of people who claim that party as their allegiance. And it seemed to me during all of our talks and all the walking and talking, that a lot of people felt that the county party might have stepped farther away from where they were comfortable with, and the results of that were showing quite quickly in the actions that the Board of Commissioners was taking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Christian, I wonder if there's this little piece of, like, we've heard this kind of anecdotally in 2016, with the presidential election, that if a candidate, or if a voter was going to vote for Trump, and I know these folks personally have had these conversations, they did so with kind of plugging their nose a bit, right? They saw it as the lesser of two evils, because they clearly wouldn't vote for a Democrat, specifically like Hillary Clinton, because of whatever thing they deemed it was. So they held their nose and just kind of went in.
That's
and
what I did.
Yeah, Shawn doing that. Other family members. I mean, that story holds true. for a lot of people. Are you? I wonder how much, if at all, do you run across that? I mean, in these conversations, people, who identify with the Republican Party, they're like, all right, I'll vote for yours, or I'll sign your petition, but I'm doing it kind of like still not fully in with the Democratic Party
Under
because,
duress.
this is, yeah, great word,
Oh,
under duress.
yes. Yeah, and I that sentiment did play out a lot of times, and we were very upfront when we talked. That to people in the district, that signing the petition did not mean you were affiliating with the Democrats. We had Democrats and conservatives on our recall committee. It was kind of a mixed bag, a little weighted towards the Dems.
Listen,
But
there's just a slight delay.
what we
with
were doing at its
Christian's
core is
Wi-Fi.
what that
I don't know. Did we lose him?
what we were
hopefully
doing.
we didn't lose
what
him.
we're
He's
attempting to do.
we've been able to outmaneuver the Wi-Fi and have him come back with ease. But we'll just wait for him to come back. Hopefully he will. But maybe, Shawn, we could, as an aside, we can talk about that. Voting under duress. You did that. I know people who did that. What was that like for you? What did that mean?
Just like you had said, a little bit of lesser of two evils type of situation. I haven't been too awfully thrilled about either party's electees the last couple. Hillary and Trump and Biden and Trump. I wasn't a big fan on either of them. But do you vote for a third party and what a lot of people say, throw away your vote?
Mm-hmm.
Or you stick with what you think is the lesser of two evils and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So it amazes me that we get to that situation though, that we end up, that the nation ends up with a lot of people going, I can't believe these are our options. How do we as the nation let it get to that point? Sometimes it just kind of feels like that's just the way it is, and no matter what your vote does, that's the way it's going to happen. You know what I mean? And I remember 2018. I think it was 2018, 2019, when they were doing the Democratic debates and watching Kamala Harris throw the busing missile at Biden, and kind of in a way calling him a bit of a racist, and she got some big traction off of that big landing. But I still remember at the time going, I don't know why we're doing. I don't know why we're doing big debates. Obviously, Biden's going to win this thing. And at that time, when she hit that big thing, I was like, well, maybe I'm wrong. And then 6 months later, Biden's the main Democrat running against Trump.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know why it felt like the way it was being covered and everything. It was just kind of going, well, obviously this is the way that it's going to go because that's how it's being covered. They're focusing. You get these debates and they're only focusing on. You get 7 guys up there, and then you get 3 or 4 out of the 7 that are really getting the time on the discussions. And you can obviously sit there and go, well, those other 3 that aren't getting much of the questions or airplay, obviously they're not going to stay very long. You know what I mean? Or maybe not. Maybe I rambled.
Well, maybe you rambled, and maybe I also am trying to figure out how to get Chris back. But
are you talking to me or are you doing work? Come on.
I'm doing both. I'm trying to listen in one ear and try to get him back. Hopefully we can make that happen. But there's having a lot of conversations with people since 2020, and then even now through what's happening in Ottawa County. There are just you can call it both sides. You can do whatever you want. I mean, there are times when people have to plug their nose for whatever reason and play the political game, if you will, right? So if somebody knows that their vote for a third party candidate is just not going to do much, and they'd rather see their vote affect the outcome of something, they're gonna make that choice. And yeah, I think that's what Chris is talking about, and what I've heard from many people in Ottawa County, is that they want to do. They're going to make this move, and that's the. To be quite clear too, like that's the work of Vote Common Good, is to say, hey, you might be a Republican, or you might have done this thing traditionally throughout your life. We'd love for you to consider a Democrat candidate because of blah 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 blah. Or in the cases in Ottawa County, you might be a Democrat, and that's all you have ever known. But in this case, you need to step outside of that box and think about how your vote will affect, things going on. So, just having that kind of wherewithal, but it takes a lot of work to know that, okay, will my vote count this way or that? What will it look like?
Yeah, yeah. Any word on Christian?
So here's the update, listener. I told Chris via text, Christian via text, that here we go, that he could pop out and then pop back in. So he did pop out, and now he's popping back in. And we'll see if we can revive this conversation.
Hey, there he is.
Hey, there you are.
Hey,
it says it's telling me that you have the software Riverside open in other tabs, and that you should close the other tabs.
Oh, okay, I see that one.
And
All
that
right.
will help.
Well, the important part is back.
I think
he is back, everybody. Back to the program. That's all right. How you doing? You doing good? I mean, that was probably a little flustering. I don't know, 5 minutes is trying to track down internet and things like that.
My apologies. A supporter has graciously allowed us some office space, but I don't actually have a plug-in for a hard line on my internet. So, but I've just noted that that's something that probably should be addressed. So thanks for that.
Yeah, no problem. Hey, Christian,
we're here to help.
We are an amateur podcast, so we are prone to all sorts of problems. So this is right within our wheelhouse.
Yep. No matter what we do, before every single time we do a podcast, something happens, interface goes down, something's muted, microphone's not working, there's a short somewhere. We'll sit for 20 minutes having a conversation before we start doing something, and 10 minutes before it starts, it'll be like, what is this echo? What, we're getting this feedback? What? It's real world.
I'm grateful for your indulgence.
This is what happens.
Yeah. So, hey, Christian, we were talking about this idea of plugging in our nose for a candidate. Maybe you just want to conclude, that how voters are feeling, and it was what you were saying with Republican voters. They feel like they have to plug their nose, if you will, and then make their vote or make their vote in a different way.
Yeah, that's when we were talking to voters. Essentially, like I had mentioned, we weren't saying that this was a Democrat or a Republican initiative. We were very upfront about saying all we wanted to do was give the voters a choice, a chance to do this again. Now that we knew more about what the Ottawa Impact PAC really was interested in doing. And that resonated. I do feel that a lot of voters, regardless of affiliation, are concerned about what is going on up at Fillmore. And our recall represented a chance for our district to make its voice heard prior to the general election in November.
Yeah. So let's talk about a little of this here. Like, what really compelled you to run for office? This process is where a little bit different than the rest, where the party selects the candidate. So you were obviously selected to run. Walk us through a little bit about that process, and then really what compelled you to put your hat in the ring.
Well, That comes from a couple of different sort of angles and directions that sort of culminated over the last couple of years. I've always been, I call it, tangentially involved in politics. I'm one of those canvassers that shows up on the midterms and at the fours to canvass for the candidates. Other than that, my involvement was pretty low level. I'd go pound the pavement when the pavement needed pounded. This organization, Ottawa Impact, sort of popped up on a lot of our radars in the late summer prior to the primaries. And we were just kind of like, okay, that deserves watching. We'll see what happens with that. Because it was, for all of the things that, people have said about how they didn't know what was going to happen, they were very clear about what was going to happen. They didn't really, their website pretty much laid out exactly how they were going to roll. But incumbents are hard to beat. Mm-hmm. So, then the primaries happen, concern level ratchets up another notch. And then the election itself, and through it all, it was very similar to what people were saying when Trump was elected prior to the inauguration. The forces of the bureaucracy and the systems as they are set up are going to have like a channeling effect. They're going to be able to kind of put a frame on the action that's going to happen. And what we saw on January 3rd, of course, was none of that at all. In 2022, I took part in a statewide leadership development program, the main mantra of which was leadership for the common good. Ironic. And I was in this cohort with, again, some just incredible people. And at the end of it, the idea is that, you're trained, you get involved. It wasn't like a recruitment thing. It was leadership in business, leading from any chair, essentially, was one of the things we talked about. But, it's hard being a Dem in Ottawa County sometimes. It's always been traditionally hard to get candidates. It's always been hard to get, to kind of gin up enthusiasm because you always feel like you're a little bit on the back foot. And, between that leadership program and kind of watching what was unrolling in real time right before my eyes, it was not an epiphany, but it was really someone has to do something, and that someone might as well be me, even though I really don't know anything about doing this.
Is this your first time running for office?
I ran for West Ottawa School Board in 22 because we had heard that there were going to be Ottawa Impact candidates coming into that in the race. So I wanted to be in there as an alternative choice, but then they never materialized. And that was my first discovery that once you're on the ballot, you can't get off that thing. You're there. Again, just kind of showing how little I know about this. So I publicly withdrew because the other person that was running was a very qualified candidate, and I didn't want to muddy the water. The objective had been accomplished, and I didn't need to be there, creating conflict. So that was my literally big toe in the water thing. But this is my first active campaign of any nature.
Gotcha. Has it been a whole new learning experience and everything, kind of getting deep into it?
I was grateful for the recall to kind of help show me the processes, both the fundraising and financial component, which is super critical, as well as just how the language and sort of how these things operate. I'm blessed with a group of people who I've known, most of them for over 20 years, who decided to come along and help me on this. they're essentially my kitchen cabinet, and we have some people that have experience working with campaigns that are sort of advising us. So I'm blessed with a lot of talent and enthusiasm around me to keep me on track, because this is a very daunting project.
Yeah, yeah, and hey, for the non-politico kitchen cabinet is your team of advisors and managers working on your behalf. That's something that I learned a few years ago. I mean, it's kind of in there when you say kitchen cabinet. I was like, okay, yeah, people who work for you, but I see that's more of a used term here. All right, Christian, I want to talk about two more things here. I want to talk about at least one more thing before we talk about what you would bring to the office, etc. But it's this criticism from Ottawa Impact. Against the whole recall process. So, Ottawa Impact and their supporters would say, hey, Lucy Ebel is the first Latina woman to hold office in Ottawa County. So, number one, she's a woman, and number two, she's representing the Latina community. Hence, when the Democratic Party is moving to move her out of office by the electoral process, they're removing essentially the voice of the Latino community. So they would say it's more of a race baiting thing. How would you respond to that? How do you respond to that type of criticism? That's why the party is doing that, because they want to get rid of that voice.
My initial response is to kind of say that it's a distraction. We had a significant component of our volunteer base was Latino. We did outreach to the community, both countywide and within the district during the recall effort and before the recall effort. And so we had buy-in from really the beginning. Part of my initial response is to at that point is to actually question whether Commissioner Ebel's using her position to actually help the Latino community as a voice. I'm not in a position to determine that because I am not Latino. But as an outside observer, it seems that statement on its face seems kind of insulting to the progress that the Latino community has made in the second district and the county as a whole over the last 15 to 20 years. And to imply that, she is their voice. Media coverage over the last year kind of suggested that a lot of the community is frustrated because she isn't representing their concerns or responding when they reach out to her. That was reported when these accusations sort of first came out. That's especially true when you consider that the second district is the most diverse in every definition of diverse you can come up with and has the highest percentage of Latino voters in the county. Latino-owned businesses have grown exponentially in the second over the last 15 years. There's still a lot of work to be done to amplify that voice in the county. I could not agree more. But over the last year, we've seen, instead of, the amplification of that voice by the commissioner, we've seen, endorsements for childhood innocence resolutions, constitutional county resolutions, Year of the Bible resolutions, and on top of that, endorsement of cutting the budget for the public health department that provides services that a lot of Hispanics use. It's at the same time, we did have instances of human trafficking within the migrant worker population of our county this year, which would have been, I thought, an outstanding opportunity to highlight the issues that community faces while they're here doing vital work that the county needs done. But nothing, that is an immediate and urgent concern. And also, the commissioner actually actively participated in the dismantling of the Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion. You know, she brought that resolution to the board on the January 3rd meeting, and that essentially demolished a layer of protection and education for area employers regarding Hispanic needs in the community. You know, my question would be to that question is like, how are we defining that voice so far? Because to a number of people, it does not seem like it has been much voice at all.
Yeah. Yeah, Shawn, if you recall, we had this question with Johnny Rodriguez, the executive director of LAUP, Latin Americans United for Progress, and
Yep.
you know what if you remember, he just flatly said, like, you know, Lucy Ebel has never reached out to us, and we are the largest organization representing this community in West Michigan. So I just found it really like that argument just doesn't hold weight for Ottawa Impact.
You know,
Well, that
I
that falls
agree
back
with the
into my
critics when they say
disdain of.
that representation matters, I agree with the critics when they say that representation matters, but that representation actually comes with responsibility. I feel to use the voice to help create policies that amplify and strengthen that community, and you know, I just haven't seen it yet, nor did we see it prior to filing our recall petition.
Yeah. And what were you saying, Shawn?
Oh, I was just going to say that kind of comes back to my disdain for identity politics. To pivot points off of that type of stuff is something I've never been a fan of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, Christian, let's pivot here and talk about your campaign. Really, I'd love to ask, like, what makes you a great candidate to represent District 2? I mean, why should people vote for you? What makes you more distinguished than others? So if you could answer that question, and then like this one here, if you could just define District 2, like what areas that encompasses.
Sure. You know, that's a really good question, because with the redistricting, things get a little wonky. So the second district is, it runs along Lake Macatawa on the north side of Holland in Holland Township, roughly boundaried by 112th Avenue, New Holland Street to the north, and 144th Avenue, with a really big chunk carved out of the northeast corner. So it constitutes about 70% of what is defined as Holland Charter Township. It's the smallest district in the county because it's the most population dense. We have a lot of multifamily housing. We have a lot of people living and striving here, and it's also a high commute district. We have major traffic arteries going through our district that a lot of people from out of district use to get to work and to get to where they need to get regularly. So it's a moving piece of the county. There's always a lot of motion. It never slows down. I've lived in this district for 28 years, and I've lived in Holland for all of my life, with the exception of the time that I was in the military. I love this district so much. I talk to people and they're like, "We got to get out of here. It's too busy." And it's like, I love it. I love the people. I love the energy. I love the fact that, you know, there is a lot of diversity, both in people, in economics, in culture. It's never not fascinating. You never meet people that you don't want to meet while you're here. And it's not on the beach. It's what you go through on your way to the beach. It's not Grand Haven. It's what you go through on your way to Grand Haven. It's like, it's the crossroads of our county, in a manner of speaking. And so we're representative of a lot of the rest of the county in our population. And, you know, I really do feel, and one of the reasons that really kind of inspired me to grab onto this was, I feel that this district needs representation worthy of the energy they're bringing to trying to make their lives as successful as they want them to be. We need a representative that's gonna advocate for all the people in the district. We need a representative that's going to see what we can do about the housing situation countywide, but definitely we, even though we have more multifamily housing than anywhere else in the county, we still have people that are looking for places to live, and to address our road system, which we are. The impacts of a road system that was built for, that was designed for about 100,000 less people are felt by us maybe a little bit more acutely because we're in the middle of so many of those connecting roads. Service has been instilled in me from the time I was very small. I mentioned my military service. My father retired from the military. My stepfather did community service throughout his entire life, and was a World War II veteran. My grandpa was a World War II veteran. We've served our country going back to the Civil War, and wow. So my life has kind of been a manner of service to my country. I came home, met a really cool woman, and she puts up with me, and we got married. That was 31 years ago. We raised 2 boys, which was, doing what I needed to do to keep my family going, while at the same time collecting a few college degrees. And then after the boys were, moving into adulthood, I looked at my community, and I became a volunteer with emergency management. I sit on the board of Ottawa Food, and I sit on the board for community mental health, helping in addition to working in nonprofits for, the past 25 plus years, trying to do better for those around me, or help those around me, or inform those around me, whether it was working for the museum or working in my current capacity. That's been a core of who I am. It's just been, I didn't plan it that way, but that's just who I turned out to be. And so I really want to help both my district and my county continue to move forward. We are facing some very unique challenges because our county has been on such an exponentially successful growth rate for a really long time. But that was not an accident. That was through planning and good governance. And I feel we might be approaching a pivot point where that good governance, the lack of that good governance, puts us in a position where we will not be as successful as we have been. And that's going to hurt a lot of people.
Yeah, Christian, I'm wondering if we could land here on this topic for the last 5 minutes here. If you were to be elected, how would you work with the Ottawa Impact Commissioners? I'll cite, for example, Doug Zylstra, a Democrat. He has stated publicly that he's wanting to work with. And I don't believe he's acted in ways that push really hard or causing really big problems. There could be somebody to come in there and say, hey, Ottawa Impact, you need to do this, this, and this, and this. But Doug Zylstra has taken a different tack with that. Even if you were to be elected, you're still not going to move the majority on this. But how would you react and respond to things that may be still controversial in the vein that they've worked in over the past year?
That's a really good point. Kind of the circumstances revolving around the Board of Commissioners changed during the course of our process with this, with Commissioner Terpstra resigning and sort of in some movement within the board. I would sit in a very different spot all the representation on the board was elected in 2022. My candidacy in election can only be seen as a direct response to the governance that Ottawa Impact is providing to the county. I have watched the meetings. I've watched the subcommittee meetings. I sit on the CMH board with 3 members of the board, and we've done things. We've had discussions together. We've continued to disagree, but the discussions weren't by any means super frosty. I will bring an open-mindedness to the process, for sure. But with that comes the knowledge that my candidacy and election is in no other way. It can be seen as nothing else than my district's reaction to the governance that's being sort of done right now. And winning that would show that my district desires different governance, and it would be a disservice to them if I did not represent that desire in my capacity. Good governance is built on consensus. It's built on discussion, open discussion, and trust between people, without a doubt. And I would see my own personal sense of ethics and honor would not let me breach that. However, the district elected me not to make a point, but to represent the dissatisfaction that they have with the current representative. And that has its own a different set of responsibilities than someone who came in 22.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Listener, that is Democratic candidate Christian Kleinjans, selected to run against Ottawa Impact Commissioner Lucy Ebel, Republican, in the special election, the recall election for Ottawa County Commissioner in District 2, occurring May 7th. Is that correct, Christian? May 7th?
That is correct.
All right. That's correct. May 7th. Christian, before we let you go, how can people connect to your work?
Right. So we have social medias, all the social medias that you could ever want. We also have our website is www.kleinjans, that's KLEINJANS, for countycommissioner.com. Facebook, X, and Instagram are all the same, Kleinjans for County Commissioner. We have a unified sort of theme going there. You can contact us through all of those means if you want to volunteer, find out more, or anything at all. We'd love to hear from you, even if you're not necessarily my biggest fan, especially if you're not my biggest fan and you live in the 2nd District, because I'd love to talk to you and find out where our opinions can meet.
Excellent. Great. Well, Christian, thanks for spending time with us this morning, and hopefully we will meet again and have more conversations.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Yep. Good meeting you, sir.
Good to meet you.
All right, Shawn. Guess what?
What? Oh, it's time for the...
Cue the music. This is like our, sometimes at the end of like big award shows, they got the person giving the speech, and then when they hear the music, it's the cue to go. This is our cue to go. So, listener, thanks for spending time with us. This has been a Common Good Conversation. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. You can also check us out on Facebook at Vote Common Good West Michigan Primary, where you can help us push to 1,000 followers. That's our goal. And then you can also subscribe to our weekly newsletter, and you can do that at Vote Common Good West Michigan. All right. Anything else? No, we are done. Nope. We are through.
We are done.
Thanks for your time, everybody, and we will see you the next go round.
Yep.